Now for our keynote speaker for the day, Brother Abdel Rahman Musa, who's here all the way from Birmingham. And just to give you a little information about Brother Abdel Rahman, he graduated from the European Institute for Humanitarian Studies with a Sharia degree, and he has strong community connections and has served as the head of the Muslim Association of Britain Youth Department for 2 years. He's currently the chair of the biggest Muslim Scout group in the UK, and he's a professional hypnotherapist. So keep your eyes open, guys. And for the last 10 years, he's actually been traveling around the world in seek of alternative psychology and medical related knowledge. Today he's going to deliver a speech on the age of action, which is a very relevant topic. So I do call upon Brother Abdel Rahman Musa to shed some light on the issues and the topic.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا ربي لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا. I bear witness that there is no God, no deity worthy of, no deity in existence, though there are deities that are made up apart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Muhammad is the final messenger, and all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as is his due, and we will never know how much that is. I'm ecstatic that Allah is my Lord, that Muhammad is the messenger that he brought this message with, that Islam is my religion. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be unto you all. I was asked not only to talk about what the brother said with regards to being active and working and doing, but also to relate that with Sayyidina Ibrahim and his life. We've just come through, or just finished with Eid, and the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, those 10 days before Eid, are extremely important because they remind us of what Ibrahim, the Prophet Abraham, did. And actually, it's one specific thing that he did with regards to Eid that we remember. But his whole life is one miracle after another. And not in terms of what Allah, not just in terms of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, but in terms of what he was able to show us. He, as an example, is quite miraculous. So inshallah, if I run through that with you and relate it to the topic of working with your ISOC, being active and getting involved. First thing I'm going to say is that, and this is a little controversial, I don't think sacrifice exists. And the reason why I don't think sacrifice exists is that when you define what sacrifice is when you give up something worthwhile for something else that is worthwhile. Or you give up something that is worthwhile for something that is not worthwhile or less worthwhile than that thing that you're giving up in the first place. Right? So you're giving something for something else. And the something that you're giving up is equal to in value or more valuable than that which you are taking in return. So I disagree with this concept when it comes to Allah asking us to do. And if you look at the Quran in Arabic, not in English, the word dahi, sacrifice, Allah does not ask us to do this. Allah asks us, when it comes to Eid, for example, to sacrifice a cow or a sheep and to feed the poor. But He does not ask us to sacrifice for ourselves. And when it comes to money, the word used is anfiqu, spend, not sacrifice. The word used for money and wealth when you give to other people is not sacrifice, it's spend. The term used for give from your time is not sacrifice, it's spend. The word used when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how we give our lives is not sacrifice. Spend. Which is funny because when you think about money, okay, spending makes sense. When you think about your life, are you spending? It's a bit, most people don't realize that it's a box with, a glass with sand, and you turn it upside down and that's all you've got. So you spend one sand, but are you really spending that sand or is it going anyway? 5 minutes ago was still 5 minutes ago, regardless of whether I'm here or whether I'm somewhere else. So it's actually from the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, spend your life when it's already being spent. It's already being spent. But He's saying, you spend it even though it's already being spent, and I will reward you for this. Do you understand? So there's no such thing as sacrifice when it comes to for the sake of Allah. Because your money is worth nothing. Your money is worth nothing. Sometimes the brother was, when I was speaking to Brother Atif, with an amazing voice, mashallah, he was saying how when they went to the Islam Cliff and they were climbing Mount Everest, they went to base camp, and he realized that he had nothing with him. It was just friends, and he's going up a mountain, he had nothing with him. And yet that was probably the happiest time of his life. The happiest days of his life. And you realize, once either you have something and it's been taken away from you, or you've acquired almost everything, all of these millionaires and billionaires, and then they commit suicide. Why are they committing suicide for? Because they realize that money is not worth anything. And so when you say sacrifice your money, you're lying to yourself. You're not sacrificing anything. You are taking something that is worthless and you are giving it to Allah, and Allah is giving you back something that is infinitely worth much more. How unfair is that? But in a good way. Right? How unfair is that? Someone comes up to you, give me nothing and I'll give you £2 million. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, give me your time which is already being spent, and I will give you infinite life. Give me your money which is worth nothing, and I will give you more of that nothing in this life, and in the hereafter I will give you even more. And so when you sit down and the brother says, we need you to help out, if you're thinking to yourself, I don't know man, can I sacrifice a couple of hours today? You're lying to yourself. The question is wrong. The very premise by which you speak is inaccurate, is flawed. So when someone says to you, there's orphans and they're dying, will you save their life? And you say, oh, do I have to sacrifice again? Right? You're lying. The very premise, that voice in your head is lying to you. Allah has never asked you to sacrifice. Allah has never asked you to sacrifice. Does this make sense? All He's asked you to do is spend that which is worthless for that which is infinitely worth much more. So Ibrahim a.s. as a little child, by the way, the scholars have said between the ages of 9 and 11, this incident that I'm about to report to you happened between the ages of 9 and 11. He is born into a family where either his father or his uncle, there are different narrations, is the lead creator or the main businessman when it comes to creating idols. But Ibrahim is a prophet and he has a heart that is awakened. He's not asleep like the majority of the people. And so he asked his father, what is it? Why are we building these idols from stone and then we're worshipping them? And there were three types of kufr at the time of Ibrahim. There was the people that worshipped idols. There were the people that worshipped planets. So some people worship rocks on earth, other people worship rocks in the heavens. And then there were people who worshipped other people, rulers and people of might and power, supposedly. Might and power. So anyway, he managed to annoy quite a few people. He did a few things. Not with the intention of annoying them, but with the intention of showing them that you're worshipping a rock that's not going to help you. And so what he did is he went into where the idols were kept, the place of worship, and he battered and crushed all of the idols except for the biggest one. And he put the axe with which he broke all the other idols in the hand of the biggest idol. Why is he doing this? He could have broke everything. And then in the morning when they called him, did you do this? Because he was the one that's speaking out against all this stuff. Did you do this? Yeah. And they didn't stop me. What kind of a God is that? Could have said, could have stopped there, but he didn't. He left the biggest one. Because he's sending a message. And that message is not just that these gods are pretty useless. Maybe you can stand under the shade when it's really hot. Right? That's a particular angle. But apart from that, not only are they useless, but Don't you think that if there was more than one God, the biggest one would destroy all the others? So they went quiet and they realized the truth. So that's not actually the point I'm trying to make. They then, Ibrahim was in big trouble now, put him into a catapult and threw him into a fire. Why did they throw him into a fire? Because the fire was so big that no one could walk up to the fire to push him in. The fire was so big that it is narrated that as birds flew over the fire, they would fall into the fire. That's how hot it was and that's how high the flames were. So they threw Ibrahim into the fire. Now Ibrahim is in the catapult and he's sitting down and the catapult's being wound up and he's just about to be thrown and he's thrown and mid-air Angel Jibreel, Gabriel comes to him and he says, Allah has sent me. Do you want anything? Do you want anything? Now what is the response of 9-year-old Ibrahim a.s. or 11-year-old Ibrahim to the angel Gabriel? What is the response? Catch me? Yeah, can you suspend gravity for a while, let me just carry on and gently land? Save me? What does he respond with? He responds with a very simple statement. He says, not from you. Do you want anything? He says, not from you. He's just about to land into that fire. Now we all know as Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the fire, be cool and be gentle and welcoming and comfortable for Ibrahim. We know this, but Ibrahim didn't know this. He's mid-air. Mid-air. It's not so fun when you're mid-air and you can see the fire coming at you. But yet, Jibreel asks him, what do you want? And it would be okay for him to say, save me, catch me, take me out of here, let's get out of here. No. He says, not from you. And then he lands in the fire, and it's cool. He walks out after a little while, after 3 or 4 days, and the people still disbelieve. They just saw a miracle, and they still disbelieve. Later on, Ibrahim grows up. He is asked to leave his wife and son, who's just a toddler, in the middle of nowhere, where now Mecca is. Where Mecca is, so in Saudi Arabia, middle of nowhere in the desert. There are no trees, there are no fruits, there's nothing, no water, there's nothing, no plantation, no human beings to safeguard them. They have 2 or 3 days worth of food and water. And Ibrahim is asked by his Lord to leave his family there. And he does. And his wife asks him, why are you doing this? And he doesn't answer. And she asks him again and he doesn't answer, he's walking away. And then she clocks on. Ibrahim is not a madman. He's not a terrorist. He is a prophet of Allah. Allah told him to do this. So she says, did Allah tell you to leave us? He said, yes. She said, okay, well if Allah told you to leave us, then don't worry about us. 2 or 3 days pass, now there's no food, there's no drink. The baby starts to cry, Ismail. He starts to cry, The mother is feeding him from her, so he can't eat. She has no water, so now she can't feed him. He starts to cry, he's hitting the earth, she's running up and down trying to find this, going from one mountain to another. And then all of a sudden, after the 7th time of coming and going, he hits the ground, Ismail hits the ground, and the angel Jibreel, again the same angel, hits the ground at the same time with his wing. And we now know that this well of Zamzam, from all the way back then, thousands of years up till now, has not been quenched. Still feeding us, still giving us water. There is a thread here, by the way, I'm not giving you random stories, don't worry, I'll tie it in a little while. Later on, the same boy Ismail, who's also a prophet, his father Ibrahim sees in his dream that he has to slaughter his son. Slaughter his son. And he sees this dream 3 times in a row. And when this happens with prophets, they know that this is inspiration from Allah, they're not just having a dream. If anyone here has this dream, please ignore it. But if you're a prophet, which you're not, Ibrahim is a prophet, he sees his dream 3 times, he knows this is inspiration from Allah. Now what does he do? What does he do? Ibrahim could have blindfolded his son in the middle of the night. He could have quickly, pulled the fast one, got his friends and tied them up, taken him to a place of slaughter and slaughtered him. He could have done any of these things. And this would have made him, you could have thought maybe the guy was a terrorist or something. Yeah? No. He goes up to his son Ismail. whom he had already sacrificed. I'm doing inverted quotes, right? Whom he had already sacrificed for Allah when he was younger, in the desert all alone. And he says to him, my son, my Lord has asked me to slaughter you. Why does he ask the son? Why doesn't he just do it? Why didn't he just do it? And then, what does his son say? His son says, do what your Lord has asked you, and you will find me of the patient, God willing. Meaning, hopefully, if God wills, I will be of the patient. So not only has he said, I accept, I submit, he said, I don't even know if I submit, and I realize that God is the one that controls everything, so I don't even control my heart. Hopefully I will continue to be submitting, even when it's happening. So Ibrahim goes, and he takes Ismail alayhi salam, and he's sitting there, Ismail's facing the ground, and Ibrahim takes the knife out, and he begins to cut, and it will not cut. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how he sends a beautiful beast, some say it's a ram or something, but it's from the heavens, as a sacrifice, as a ransom for Ismail. Now why is it a ransom? Who should be ransoming who? Shouldn't the father be paying ransom to the Lord for his son? Isn't that the case? If someone, I'm just giving a metaphor, but you might have even seen the film Ransom or whatever it was called. Any of these movies, kids kidnapped, who has to pay to get the kid back? The parent or the guy who's kidnapping? Who has to pay? The parents, right? Because it's their child. And yet Allah is paying the ransom. Obviously they didn't kidnap the son, but you see, the parent is the one that should be paying the ransom, yet Allah pays the ransom. And so many of these occurrences happen. So what's going on? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in this life and in the hereafter, Ibrahim is sacrificing his son. Allah gives him a son. He doesn't lose his son. He doesn't lose his son. Spend from your time. You don't lose your time. It's still there. You still remember. You wake up the morning after and you remember. Did you have a good time? Yeah, how do you know? I can't remember. I was drunk. It's not like that. Did you have a good time? Yes, I remember. I had the good time. So the time is still yours. And yet you get rewarded for it. Allah gives you a ransom for something that was his anyway. Who gave Ibrahim his son? Allah. And yet Allah, after giving him the son, asked him to give him back and doesn't accept it. He says, just the fact that you acknowledged is enough. And Ibrahim's trying to slaughter it. No, the knife will not cut. And then Allah gives him this wealth. And every year now, we slaughter these animals to feed the poor, and we remember Ibrahim and Ismail. So the point here is as follows. Are you willing to give nothing to get everything? Bit of a trick question, or it's a no-brainer, really. Meaning if you say no, you have no brains. Right? Are you willing to give nothing to acquire everything? Are we? Inshallah, say God willing. Because this is the point. But our nafs and the devil, the brother read some Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. The devil, he promises you that you will be poor. The devil promises you that you will be poor. When you come to give that fiver in your pocket, and you are going to go to the cinema, so you're going to spend that fiver anyway, and a bit more. You're going to go out and get a little meal that was garbage, because it's a takeaway, it's fast food. It goes in here and it goes out, and that's it. It doesn't do anything. It might add a couple of pounds, but no nutritional value is added really. It was going to be spent anyway. But before you do it, and the brother asks you, or the sister asks you for £5, £10, Shaitan comes in and he lies to you. He says, you're going to be poor. See this £5, it's the last £5 in your that you have, even though you got 5,000 in the bank. He'll lie to you. The devil is the one that promises you poverty. But Allah promises you wealth and forgiveness. But you have to be willing to accept it. You have to be willing to accept. So many people, good things happen to them and they're still not grateful. Good things happen to them and they're still ungrateful. They're unwilling to accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the all-kind, the all-mentioning. So what's the lesson, the true lesson behind the story of Ibrahim? What is the true lesson? The lesson is that you have nothing to lose when you trust in Allah. That is the lesson. You have nothing to lose when you trust in Allah. You know, as a parent, I only have one boy, and I remember most parents will tell you the same thing happens. When your first child is born and they can't do anything, and you're sleeping, and every so often you wake up just to make sure that they're breathing. Right? Most parents will go through this experience. Now that's okay, that's normal. But if you make a routine and you have your little stopwatch so that you're up every 15 minutes to make sure your child's awake, then you don't realize Allah is the one who's sustaining you. Yeah? And the mother will feed, the kid will suckle, and the father will go and bring, and the mother will come and go. But none of this means anything. And these orphans, brothers are going to tell you how much they raised. Again, another controversial statement. Our money is not what saves them. Our money is not what saves them. And the founder of Islamic Relief, Dr. Hani Banna, always says this. Your money will not save them. And your time will not save them. And Sayyidah Hajra, when she was running from mountain to mountain, looking for water for her son Ismail, who was dying, crying of hunger and thirst, it was not her running that saved him. She's not the one that dug the well. It was not her running that saved him. But yet she ran. And you have to run. And you have to do. It was not the running that brought the water, but it was the sincerity through the running that made Allah send Angel Jibreel. It was not anything that saved Ibrahim when he was being catapulted, except for his sincerity and his actions of trying to show the people that they are enslaving themselves to rocks on earth, rocks in the heavens, and other human beings. Do you see the difference? We do not believe in sincerity. We do not have this poverty mindset. We don't have this. And it's so funny that the people who are dying are the ones that can look you in the face and smile, while you look at them and you start to cry. What's going on there? How ironic is that you are looking at these people dying in front of you and you're crying and crying like you're the one who's going to die. And they're looking at you and smiling. Other stories of little children that they're just about to die and they give them a biscuit and the kid takes the biscuit and looks for another kid to feed. And you hear this and you want to cry, but they're not crying. They're not crying because they realize that everything comes from Allah. There is nothing in this world that is of value. And every time you think that something is of value, you're lying to yourself. And you're enslaving yourself to that thing. In every way. In every way. Sometimes we think it's our eloquence that makes people listen to us. It's not. Sometimes we think it's our actions that make things happen. It's not. But we're still asked to do it. Sometimes we think that, if I act a certain way, people will like me. This is not true either. This is the exact opposite of the way there is. If you sacrifice Allah for anything in this life, then everything in this life will hate you. Because you're putting those things against Allah. You're starting a war between the creator of those things and those things. Except those things are quite smart, but we're not. So the rock in the song will never, ever be happy for someone to bow down to it. But the man bowing down to it will. Are we accepting questions and answers? Okay, inshallah. I'll finish 8 or 9 minutes early. If anyone has any questions or any comments, inshallah, that'll be, I believe, a bit more beneficial than me just rambling on. Jazakumullah khairan and your patience for listening.
Again, thank you to the speaker for speaking about the topic. Jazakallah khair. We'll open up to the floor then to ask quick questions for 5 minutes. If anyone has any questions, you can put your hands up and we can have the roaming mic on the floor. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, please do raise your hands.
In the meanwhile, I'd just like to say, as a hypnotherapist, I'm proud that no one here fell asleep. Alhamdulillah, it's very good news. But I would like you now to ask any questions or make any comments if you have any.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Jazakallah khair for a very insightful talk. You mentioned something in it which I hadn't really thought about, which is that you're not in fact sacrificing anything when you're doing it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you mentioned about you get that voice which is in the back of your head, which everyone gets, well I get anyway, which tells you, no, this money can go somewhere else, this money can go somewhere else. From your experience, I mean, what advice would you give to somebody who always has that niggling voice in the back of their head, asking them, telling them, reminding them that you're not going to get this money back, you're broke, you're a student, you're already in your overdraft, you've already had a tuition fee loan, what's this £100 only going to come back and bite you there in life? What advice would you give?
The first thing is you have to realize that this is your voice. Yeah, it's your voice. So you have control over your own voices in your head. And sometimes you think and you're aware of your thoughts, and sometimes you think but you're not aware that you're the one creating the thoughts. So all of a sudden you start feeling upset and you don't know why you were upset. But you're the one that's creating that. You just haven't realized it. So the first thing you need to do is realize that this is your creation. Allah gave you your body, He made you the Lord over yourself. And so you have to accept Lordship over yourself. That's the first thing. Second thing is, as the Lord, you have to be able to realize that this thought can exist if it wants to. Yeah? Like, don't give it power. Don't think, I've got to resist that thought. No, don't fight against it, because the thought isn't even valid in the first place. It's like if someone comes up to you and says, you don't exist. Or someone says to you, oh, look at this ghost standing next to me. You just ignore the thought in the first place. So don't fight against the thought. Just say, okay, thanks. I created you. Don't know how, but hey, thanks. I'm going to go on without you. By doing so, even if you don't give the money, just try that out and see what happens onto your heart. You will feel a relief. You'll feel a relief. You know, when we fast, we do not see. There's many reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to fast. Some of them we know, some of them we don't. From what we know is that when you are drinking, you're teaching yourself that I am not my body. Most of us wake up in the morning and we go, I don't feel good today. Meaning, I am my body and my body doesn't feel good today, and so therefore I don't feel good today because I am the body that doesn't feel good. When you fast, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding you that you are not your body. You are much more than your body. You are a soul in that body, and sometimes out of that body during night, because you leave your body, but you're not the body. So these thoughts, and you're not your mind either. That's the other thing. People think, I am my mind, I am my thoughts. You're not. Your thoughts are random things. If I ask you right now, what's your next thought? Does anyone here know what their next thought is going to be? So even though you're the one that's creating it, you still don't know what it's going to be. Right? So they're just random things. But we're told in Islam that these random occurrences, urges, whims, thoughts, desires, they come and they go. But will you be enslaved to them? So there's a rock. You're walking past the rock. Rocks come and they go. Right? Well, we come and they go, but they kind of stay still. Right? But what do you do when you see the rock? And it's the same thing with your thoughts. What do? Do you give them power? Do you worship them? The rock comes, their thought comes and says you're going to be.
Is there any other questions? We have time for one more question. There's one more question on the floor. Any hands?
It's like an auction.
You have a question down there?
Since no one's taken it up. Having had experience at university and then in many organisations, work and volunteering, how do you encourage and advise students at the university to spend their time, their free time, especially with volunteering for the ISOC and so on?
Okay, I don't know if anyone has free time. And this kind of goes back to what the brother was saying. I don't know if anyone has free time. How free is time really? Time is quite expensive. So I don't know if anyone has any free time, to be honest. But if you're saying time where you're just sitting playing with your Xbox, twiddling your thumbs, then what I'm going to remind you is of as follows. I know a guy when he was a student, he was always £600 overdraft. And then he got his first job, and he was still £600 overdraft. And he got a promotion, and now he's on close to 30 grand a year, and he's still £600 overdraft every single month. So, well, the point here is that there's something called a cybernetic system whereby a pilot is going from here to Malaysia, since we have some Malaysians in the country, very lovely country, I've been there. So what he does is he sets on autopilot. So the wind comes along and it pushes the train a little bit, but the computer has been programmed to stay on course, so it comes back like this. So it's on a straight line, and it pushes it, the wind pushes it, so it realizes that and it comes back, and it pushes it and it realizes it comes back. And we do the same thing. We program ourselves, this brother has programmed himself to be if this was zero, £600 overdraft. So the money comes in, right? Now everyone's thinking that he's programmed it to be zero. Some people programmed it to be 5,000. Always have £5,000 in the bank, regardless. Some people programmed it to be minus 600, like this brother. So the money comes in, and it's over, plus 2,000. And then he has to, unconsciously or consciously or whatever, that little program inside his mind, the little computer, has to make it so that it goes down like this at the end of the month. And has to every month, every single month. So when it comes to spending money, when it comes to doing what you do with your time, there's always going to be a priority. People say, I've got to study. Okay, but then they're watching Match of the Day. What happened to your study? Right? I've got to study, but then, but I've got to meet the sisters and we've got to discuss hijab. Right? I've got to study, but I'm going to play football with the guys. I'm going to study, but I'm running in a hurry, but I'm going to take 20 minutes to do my makeup. Right? So everyone's always got these priorities. There comes a time when you just got to say to yourself, it doesn't matter what's happening, this is going to be done. It doesn't matter what's happening, and guess what? That now becomes your new cybernetic destination. Everything else revolves around that. Do you understand? You don't say, if I have free time, then I'll do it, because the free time happens, but you're not aimed at that. You're not aimed at that. You haven't aimed your arrow there. So you'll think up of anything not to do that. If you say, I'm going to read 1 hour of Quran a day regardless, I could be bankrupt, imprisoned, whatever, regardless, then you'll do it. And everything else will come inside. The other thing to say is Allah always gives you more. I know a brother who had £225 left, and that was it. And he was in Ramadan, and it was in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and he heard about how giving charity, Allah gives you more, etc., etc. And he said, you know what? I'm poor as hell, man. £225, and they're asking me to give money. And then a thought came to him. He said, I've got £225. What the hell is £225? What is £225? I'm acting like I'm going to die. That £225 isn't going to save me. I'm that broke. That £225 isn't going to save me. I might as well give it up as well. And then I'll just be broke. But at least I'll be broke without having to worry about the £250. Yeah? Because he realized he was so broke. I might as well just give whatever I've got left. And he did. And within a month, he says that wallahi he made £80,000. Within a month, he made from broke, just out of uni, into £80,000 a month. How many people make that in 4 years? Did it in 1 month. So, who are you going to believe at the end of the day? Are you going to believe Allah, or are you going to believe the devil, or yourself, or other people? Jazakallah.